White wind howled across the plains like a living thing, swallowing fences, roads, and hope alike. Margaret Holloway pulled her shawl tighter as she struggled through knee-deep snow toward her barn. The sun had vanished hours ago, though it was barely past noon. Out here on the Kansas frontier, winter decided its own rules. She had just turned back toward the house when she heard it. A sound, thin, desperate, almost lost beneath the scream of the wind. Not an animal. A cry. Margaret froze. Her heart pounded as she listened again. There it was, weak, breaking, unmistakably human. She followed the sound past a half-buried cottonwood, where the snow had drifted into a hollow. And there, wrapped in little more than a tattered blanket, lay a baby. The child's skin was blue with cold. His tiny chest fluttered like a trapped bird. Dark hair was crusted with ice, and a small beaded charm, clearly Comanche, was tied around his wrist. Margaret's breath caught. Everyone knew what helping a Comanche could mean. Settlers whispered stories of raids, revenge, and bloodshed. Soldiers came through often, warning families to stay clear. They are not like us, people said. But none of that mattered now. This was a baby. Margaret scooped him into her arms, pressing him against her chest, shielding him from the wind with her own body. She turned and fought her way back to the house, every step a battle. By the time she reached the door, her fingers were numb, and tears froze on her cheeks. Inside, she lit the stove, wrapped the child in warm cloth, and rubbed his tiny limbs until color slowly returned. She fed him milk with shaking hands and whispered prayers she hadn't spoken since her husband died 2 winters earlier. The baby survived the night. And the next. For 3 days, the storm raged. Margaret kept the child hidden, tending to him as if he were her own. She named him Little Wind, because he had arrived carried by one, and because he was strong enough to endure it. On the 4th morning, the blizzard finally broke. The sky cleared into a painful blue, and the land lay silent under miles of white. Margaret was feeding Little Wind when she saw movement outside her window. At first, she thought it was snow drifting from the roof. Then she saw the horses. 1, 10, 20. They emerged silently from the hills like spirits. Painted faces, feathered lances, rifles slung across broad backs. 100 Comanche warriors surrounded her home. Margaret's hands went cold. This was it. She placed the baby gently in his cradle and stepped outside. The warriors said nothing. Their horses stamped softly, steam rising from their nostrils. At the front sat an older man with iron-gray hair braided down his back. His eyes never left her. Margaret raised her hands, not in surrender, but in honesty. "I found your child," she said, her voice steady despite the terror in her chest. "He was freezing. I couldn't leave him." The chief dismounted. He walked past her without a word and entered the house. Margaret followed, heart hammering. He knelt beside the cradle, his face unreadable as he looked at the sleeping child. Slowly, he reached out and touched the baby's cheek. A sound escaped him, low, broken. He pressed his forehead to the cradle and closed his eyes. When he stood, his gaze met Margaret's. "You saved my grandson," he said. His English was rough, but clear. Margaret swallowed. "I only did what anyone should." He studied her for a long moment, then turned and spoke in Comanche. The warriors outside lowered their weapons. The chief returned his attention to her. "My people searched for 4 days," he said. "The storm took our trail. We thought him gone to the spirits." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small carved medallion, worn smooth by time. "This is not payment," he said, placing it in her palm. "It is a bond." Then something unexpected happened. One by one, the warriors dismounted. They placed gifts in the snow: buffalo hide, dried meat, warm furs, finely crafted tools. A silent offering of gratitude. Before leaving, the chief paused at the doorway. "If ever you are in danger," he said, "light a fire on that hill." He pointed toward the ridge behind her home. "We will come." The Comanche rode away as quietly as they had arrived. Margaret stood alone again, the wind whispering over the plains. Life did not become easier, but it became different. That winter, when supplies ran low, a bundle of meat appeared at her door. When wolves circled too close at night, distant riders chased them off. No one ever spoke openly of it, but other settlers noticed something strange. No harm ever came to Margaret Holloway. Years later, children would ask her if the story was true, if one woman's kindness really brought 100 warriors to her door. She would smile softly and say, Kindness is louder than fear. And sometimes, it echoes farther than we ever expect.